Nobody expected this. Finally, the woman seated at the top of the entire organization, the president of the Indiana Fever, uttered the quiet portion out loud. Her comments aroused the entire basketball music community, in addition to raising eyebrows. The realities of that franchise, music, politics, pressure, locker room dynamics, and the conflict between building a champion and a brand were revealed for the first time. And when you hear the complete tale, everything you thought was true about Caitlin Clark's situation in Indiana is changed. Now, let's go back to the beginning of this story. Before Caitlin Clark ever wore a Hoosier uniform, Indiana was among the least famous teams in professional basketball. There's talk about 6 wins in 2021, 5 wins in 2022, and 13 wins in 2023. For nearly 10 years, they were a joke. No fans, no buzz, no spotlight. No cameras would be present. The crowd weren't filling the seats. The WNBA scene had completely changed regardless of what the Fever had been. That was the reality. A once proud franchise became an afterthought. But no one in that front office could have planned what happened, no matter how hard they tried. Everything changed when the 2024 WNBA draft's first overall pick walked into the room. Caitlin Clark changed the league as a whole in addition to lowering the temperature. The audiences were sold out everywhere she performed. Record-breaking TV ratings, jerseys flying off the racks, and a media frenzy that, to be honest, had never been seen in women's basketball since music. I mean, the organization had to make a decision in the midst of that eruption. Would they ride the wave or try to steer it in a different direction? At that point, the entire story becomes fascinating because the Fever needed someone at the top who knew exactly what they had. A once-in-a-generation athlete who was single-handedly changing what was possible for women's sports. And the front office made a decision that shocked many people. They named Kelly Krokoff as their new president of basketball and business operations. On paper, it made logical. Krokoff was a part of the squad that won the 2012 title, had founded the Fever in the past, and had personal experience with the group. With all the anticipated enthusiasm, the squad introduced her. But something in her initial news conference's rhetoric raised issues that many at the time chose to overlook, but months later would come back to ruin the entire firm. Because the warning signs were hidden in plain sight, nobody saw them until it was too late. Everything broke down at this point. July 2025. The Fever are having trouble with Caitlin Clark's injury absence. Clark has only played in 11 games this season due to a groin issue that has been bothering her for weeks. Fans are annoyed. The team is close to qualifying for the postseason. The pressure is rising. Amidst all of that, the internet unearths a buried speech from October 2024 that most people had entirely overlooked on the same day that the footage from Krokoff's first news conference mysteriously reappears on social media. This is about the Indiana Fever. Krokoff said during the press conference, staring straight into the cameras, "Yes, Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston are our foundational players, and we plan to keep adding to them. However, I want the squad to be a national leader and a long-lasting brand like Apple or whatever." 5 words, a company like Apple. That was all that was needed because that wasn't a vision that many people heard in that line. The video became viral in a matter of hours, and the fan base grew rapidly. It was a warning. Such a reaction was unprecedented in the Fever front office. In addition to being irate, fans were well-organized, noisy, and difficult to ignore. The analogy to Apple resonated differently because of what Apple actually achieved. Their whole identity was built around one visionary, Steve Jobs, and the business nearly collapsed after his departure. As a result, when the Fever president used that exact analogy, Clark supporters saw something in it that looked revealing, as if the group already saw Clark as an element rather than the main focus. On social media, a fan reacted to enduring brands that share their beliefs. Apple became a global icon thanks to Steve Jobs, the company's star and visionary. Another fan also didn't hold back. The Fever will admit they squandered the best opportunity in women's sports history. They said when Clark finally decides she's had enough of the front office dumpster fire. The message boards, comment sections, and replies all reflected the same fundamental feeling. You don't downplay the most important player this team has ever had, and you continue to pay attention to her. The criticism wasn't simply noise. Kroskoff's entire account vanished a few hours after the video became viral, completely empty, where there had only been a social media presence a few days earlier. This was a decision, and someone in that company knew how bad things were getting. Instead of a message or an explanation, there was silence. This is where it gets even more complicated, because while front staff was being vilified online, the players on the court, the ones who really suited up next to Caitlin Clark every night, were presenting a completely different and much more honest story. Lexi Ho, one of Clark's closest pals, didn't hold anything when she applied for a Glamour magazine article. Ho said that everyone in the league already knew, even though almost no one wearing a Fever uniform had previously been willing to disclose. I think there is some jealousy over the Fever because of the media exposure and the people who have stood beside us since Caitlin came. She went one step further and revealed that in their own locker rooms, teams from all over the league have been openly talking things like, "We can't let the Fever win." Hull's comments expose an unsettling reality that had been emerging for 2 seasons. The Fever do more than just play hoops these days. Every time they play, they are in a situation where other teams have singled them out because of a single person on their squad, rather than the team's overall performance. Sophie Cunningham took it a step further. The player who made it clear early on that taking cheap shots at her teammate would have consequences, and who established herself as Clark's enforcer on the floor, had already come forward and confirmed what the entire league had been speculating about. Before entering Indiana, Aaliyah Cunningham said she heard it when she was still in Phoenix.